this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates, a podcast that follows our journey of investing. Whether you're an absolute beginner or approaching Warren Buffett status, our aim is to help break down your barriers from beginning to dividend. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How's it going?
I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this interview. You started the financial year by saying you want to interview all ASX 200 CEOs. I thought that was a big, lofty goal, but I loved it. And it's really exciting that we're starting to chip away at it.
Yes, we are. We're slowly getting through it, and we have an absolute ripper of an interview today. And you know that there's that sort of workplace mythology around people who started in the mailroom, you know, those that started in the low-paid positions of a company and really climbed the ranks all the way to the top job. Well, today we are talking to one of these people who successfully climbed the entire corporate ladder. Don Meij has worked at Domino's for 3 decades, having started as a delivery driver in 1987 and working his way to become CEO and managing director of Domino's Pizza Enterprises, where he oversaw an ASX listing in 2005, international expansion through the 2010s, and now Domino enjoys a network of over 2,800 stores in 10 countries and is a true Australian success story. Don is one of Australia's great entrepreneurs, and we can't wait to get stuck into this conversation about story to date, the technology developments of the company, and his approach to people and culture. So it is our absolute pleasure to welcome Don Meij.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Now, Don, we do like to start these interviews by having the CEO describe their company in their own words. So to kick us off today, what is Domino's?
Yeah, so Domino's is the world's largest and most loved pizza company that's pioneered the home-delivered food market globally, and it's still what we're best at today. You know, digital delivery is the essence of what drives the underlying growth for our business globally. Domino's itself is the brand, and we're Domino's Pizza Enterprises. So we're just about to open our 3,000th store, which clearly makes us the biggest Domino's group within the world.
Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty about the actual company, we've got to ask, and I'm sure you've had this thousands of times before, but what is your favorite pizza topping?
Yeah, pepperoni. It's bizarre, but I do eat a lot of pizza when I'm traveling, particularly throughout our business. You're always testing all the new products. I just got back from Europe, so I had a lot of pizza. And but pepperoni is always my go-to with jalapenos.
Oh, nice addition.
I guess we have to ask the most controversial question when it comes to pizza. Does pineapple belong on a pizza?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's not a Supreme without pineapple on there. And of course, the ham and pineapple is just iconic in Australia.
So, Don, if Bryce gave a little bit of your background there, starting as a pizza delivery driver in 1987, working all your way up to leading this massive global business, but would love to hear it in your own words. Can you tell us that story, how it started and how you got to where you were?
Sure. Like most of our team members, you know, we'll be getting towards 100,000 team members around the world right now, but I started as a pizza delivery driver while I was studying at university. I was studying to be a high school teacher, and I actually delivered pizza for 2 years, which isn't as common. You know, many of our drivers are maybe with us for 12 months, and then they either progress through the business or it is part-time work. So 2 years is by time is actually quite long in our business. I got towards the end of my degree. I realized I didn't want to teach, and so I just took a full-time job thinking I was going to start a new degree. 9 months to go, and my kids always remind me that I didn't graduate from college or university, although I expect them to. And but yeah, we were a little company then called Silvio's Pizza, which was only based in southeast Queensland. We had 15 stores, and so I took a manager's job. I did that and loved it. And my father was a businessman, so just all these memories and the thrill of creating things and turning something that wasn't successful into something successful really motivated me. So I was manager of the year for that little business that year. Then I became a supervisor, an operations manager, and a small shareholder in Silvio's. And then in 1993, so 6 years later, we acquired the rights to Domino's, and it had closed down everywhere else in Australia except for Sydney, and we didn't have any stores in Sydney. So the founder of Silvio's remained running Silvio's, and I actually went down to Sydney and ran Domino's. And that was the most incredible period of my whole career where I really got to understand the pizza business, because here was this this originally a US-founded business that, like a lot of US companies, was failing all over the world except for in the US. And yet, so, we when we competed against Domino's, we always thought that it wasn't a great concept, but actually it was a great concept that just hadn't been applied in an Australian way. And having the Australian pizza knowledge added to a great concept. After 2 years of running two separate brands in 95, we decided, look, it's silly buying all this different media and creating different products. We had to merge and become one brand. And I was the smaller shareholder, but I fought really hard it should be Domino's, because I just believed that in those days we had two bigger competitors in Pizza Hut and another company called Pizza Haven. And if we're ever going to be seriously competitive, we needed to map into the global insights of Domino's. And so convinced my fellow shareholders, and between 95 and 96, we converted all the Silvio stores to Domino's. And because I fought so hard, I also thought that I should lead by example. So I went and franchised. And I bought my first store in Morayfield, Caboolture, which is just north of Brisbane, in January 1996, with a dream that over 15 or 20 years I'd have 20 stores, which was modelled off another franchisee in the US. And wow, overnight that first store in Morayfield, Caboolture became the second biggest Domino's store on the planet. For the next 3 years, we would go to the US to a rally, and I kept getting knocked off by a store in Iceland, believe it or not.
No way.
which is really interesting. And we just kept, this was a really, really busy pizza store. As I said, it was the second biggest in the world for Domino's, and Australia had never seen anything like it in our company. So then over the next 5 years, I grew to 17 stores, went up into Toowoomba and the Sunshine Coast and parts of Brisbane. And the 20 store plan was happening really quickly. Here's this little business making a couple of $1 million a year selling pizza. And so by 2001, whilst myself and some other franchisees were doing quite well, the company still was quite small. We were 174 stores. There was another company called Eagle Boys, which was 168 stores, so basically our same size. A company called Pizza Haven, which was a copy of Pizza Hut, which was 284 stores. And then Pizza Hut had 427 stores at that time. And so I was down in Sydney, going to the Sydney Motor Show to finally treat myself, and I caught up with the chairman and the largest shareholder, who's Mr. Jack Cowan, and still our chairman today, and and his family is our largest shareholder. And he said, "Look, Don, you've had a lot of fun, but it's time to come in and get back into the company," which took a lot of thought and stress, because when you're running your own little franchise, you're your own boss. I had 500 team members, loving life, master of your own destiny. Getting back into a bigger company and driving and leading through others is a different kind of journey. But there's a competitive nature in who I am, and so the idea that if we could be market leader in our own communities, why couldn't we be the biggest pizza company in Australia? And so in 2001, another franchisee, Grant Burke, who's still a director and a significant shareholder in our board, he used his 8 stores, I used my 17 stores, and we ended up buying 20 and then 25% of Domino's Australia then. We were only in Australia. In fact, we hadn't even gone into Melbourne yet. And within 2 years, we became the market leader. I became the CEO a year later, and it was just extraordinary. Pizza Hut closed about 130 stores. We opened a lot of stores. Our sales went so well, and it was a hell of a journey. So we started to expand around Australia. We went into New Zealand. We became the market leader there within a very short period of time as well, which was quite extraordinary. And then, as the company was getting so big so quickly, Grant decided that he didn't want to be part of the leadership team directly. He'd still like to be involved in the business. So rather than we keep buying each other out over time, we decided, well, why don't we list this business? Then we'd have, and as an entrepreneur, I just have this insatiable appetite for growth and the enjoyment of building teams and building products and building a business. And so 2005, we listed the business. I think our share price was $2.20. We had a market cap of 120 million. And then we were a little bit concerned in 2005-06 that would we eventually grow out of Australia and New Zealand? And we had to make a decision, because we were worried that there'd be only so much pizza Australians and New Zealanders would eat, which, by the way, we're very naive to, because we're still growing today. But we did this model called 1 degree of separation. That is, should we remain Australia and New Zealand and do other brands, which can be quite common, other franchise brands, and maybe including creating our own, or are we really good at Domino's, and would we like to take on other Domino's markets around the world? And the Domino's model is a really, really amazing model, and there's very few like it in the world. We're not the only successful group around the world. There are other quite successful master franchisees, be it that we're the biggest. So anyway, we convinced ourselves that the 1 degree should be that we should be continuing to grow in Domino's, and so we newly listed $120 million market cap, $2.20 share price, and we acquired the rights to France, the Netherlands, and Belgium in 2006 for €8.7 million, roughly 12 million Australian dollars at the time. It's probably worth 4 or 5 billion today in our portfolio. But it was challenging because, you know, Australian retailers have got a poor track record traveling overseas. And so we had a lot of shareholders who questioned us, and rightfully so, because we could have been naive. And, you know, we bought a business that basically was losing money, and it still hadn't paid any royalty to Domino's in the US. And we bought France and we're given the Netherlands and Belgium for free, which is the population of Australia and New Zealand. I learned as a young franchisee, whenever there's opportunity to take territory, grab as much as you can. You'll probably never regret it. You know, used to draw farms into the maps around the stores when I was buying them, because you never know, there could be houses one day and that's worth money, because that's the value in Domino's, is your territory. So anyway, long story short, we acquired France, Netherlands, and Belgium. The irony of all of it is that the Netherlands business was the one that took off first. And the Benelux, outside of Australia and New Zealand, was historically our second most successful business until recent years. Just incredible. The reason we were given it for free is because a lot of people didn't think the Dutch would eat pizza, you know, and that very frugal market. Well, we're not only the biggest pizza company in the Netherlands, we're now bigger than McDonald's by store count, not by sales yet. In fact, we're bigger than McDonald's in Belgium as well, in store count. And we will beat them in sales, in our own belief, in years to come. And then we went into Japan 9 years ago, September 9 years ago. A lot of people said, what are you doing this time? You know, the Japanese don't eat pizza. We believe that they would. But at least in the near term, there was enough market share to go after. Today, it's the fastest growth business we own. It's extraordinary what's happening in Japan. And then, we went into Germany 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. Domino's had never made it in Germany. It's the second fastest growth business we have today. Also extraordinary. I just came out of Germany a few weeks ago. What a business. It's going to be huge. And in more recent years, we've acquired Denmark a couple of years ago, Luxembourg, and we take on Taiwan, our 10th country, in 31st of August. So, yeah, you know, we're now butting on 3,000 stores, and it's really interesting. You know, today as we take on Taiwan, we'll be 365 million population. You know, when I grew up in this business, I had two envies of the world as an Australian. There's not that many Australians, and the Aussie peso. You know, it was 1 minute you'd be parity over my lifetime, and next thing you could be down to 48 cents. Really hard on a global scale when you've got US investors and, you know, and international investors, that fluctuation as a business. And what we have today is we have a business of 365 million people. That's a bigger population than the US. And when you add those 10 countries together, it's a bigger GDP than China. So, and it's mostly euro yen denominated, of course, about to take on a Taiwanese currency, and we've got Kiwi and Danish krona. But the big nuts and bolts of our business today in growth is euro and yen. So these are really solid, historically global, strong currencies. All currencies fluctuate. But yeah, it's nice to have those. And the irony as well is that in the last decade, the 60 million Australia, New Zealand, and the Benelux was the main driver of our business, created the core of our earnings. But in the last couple of years, it's Japan, Germany, and France. It's 280 million people, and they're just on a tear. And shareholders, I can't talk about our results and so on, and because we report next week, but our shareholders can track our store count live on our website. So as a store opens, it goes on there live. And we opened 285 stores in the last financial year, which was a huge record. And Japan, France, and Germany led the charge. So it's exciting days ahead.
Yeah, it's an incredible story, and it's probably one of Australia's best business stories, both you personally and what Domino's has done. And I think people just look at it as a pizza store and look past the incredible story that you're building overseas as well. We'd love to sort of unpack some of the lessons that you've learned over the journey in growing this business. If we start in Australia, you know, you mentioned there that when you came in to head up Domino's, it was you had big competitors that were bigger than you, but very quickly you took market leadership roles. So What were some of the things that, you employed to get there? And I guess these days you're the big fish in the pond and you've got competitors nipping at your heels. How do you think about competing with new pizza upstarts?
Yeah. So we're in the value business, and value at Domino's is you take product, service, and image, you divide it by price equals value. So the better your product, the better your service, the better your image in the eyes of the customer, then you can you can have price control, and you can actually be a little bit more expensive and be great value. And that retail model, we believe, applies to everything. And so we continue as a business focus on our product, our service, and image. And that's what we did right back in those early days to what we still do today as we enter a new country. We've never arrived as the market leader. And we're not yet in Taiwan, but we're the market leader in every of the other 9 countries we've been in and operated so far. And so we underlying that, we have a business model called high volume mentality. And high volume mentality is all about removing all the mental and physical bottlenecks in a business, and your sales will go up. I'll give you a really simple example, is that when we went into France, the French franchisees would say, we're not even allowed to sell beer or wine. Euro Disney sells beer and wine. And historically, Domino's didn't sell alcohol because we're in the delivery business, and the idea of drink driving, would there ever be a risk, control. But that was sort of a US Australian view of the world. That wasn't a European, where Europeans are far more responsible with alcohol. They don't have anywhere near the binging culture that Australia and Britain and America has. And so the idea of removing a mental bottleneck by letting the franchisees sell beer and wine was an enabler. We didn't think it was going to make the business the most successful piece, but it was a mental barrier. If we can't sell beer and wine, we can't be successful. Okay, well, let's sell beer and wine. By the way, here's a bunch of other things that we think are actually even more important, our delivery times and so on. So in Australia, that was very much the early journey, was that how do we differentiate? We've got the attitude of an 18 to 24-year-old. Domino's was born in universities. And so with that attitude, with this high volume mentality, and then endlessly focused on product, service, and image of the brand, these are some of the key things. And obviously there's a lot more than that, but there's some of the key things that drive our business.
So then moving overseas, Don, you've mentioned that you've reached into Asia, obviously Europe, Germany, Belgium, France, you've mentioned them all. You said there that at most instances your shareholders didn't believe that it could be possible, and there was a lot of pushback. So how do you approach these different markets? Was your mentality the whole build it and they will come? You were so I guess trusting in the product that you had, or what was your approach to each individual market?
And by the way, especially in the early days, we were very nervous because there is no guarantee. And the first thing is that when we travel as entrepreneurs, not as Australians. Our competitors in France are the other French pizza players, or QSR in the Netherlands and Belgium. And one of the most offensive things for any company when it travels and it tries to take its brand or business overseas is to continue to refer to the mothership in the name of that country. In America, or in Australia. Well, guess what? When you look outside, it's France. And if you use the national identity of where you come from as your lead, in most cases, that's alienating, because people go, well, I'm just shutting down because you're very narrow. You're Australian and this is France. But with an entrepreneurial model, and you just talk to high volume mentality and product, service, and image divided by price equals value, is that we speak pizza. We speak the laws of philosophies around business. And therefore, these are, as they've turned out now, tried and tested business models. Inevitably, if people want to compare the countries, because there is some competitive spirit, great. But the primary focus is on the entrepreneurial models. Today that's our technology as well, and so on. But we had that innately because we were used to the Americans coming into Australia and actually failing the first 3 times. And it was a good business. They just were, it's not America. Australians is a socialist country. We don't like to always admit that, but we're a very, very heavily socialized country. By the way, so are nearly all the 10 countries that we operate in. And we have minimum wages. We're an island. We don't have a third workforce that works for below minimum wages and tips. Our taste buds aren't the same. Australians watch a lot of American content, but Americans don't watch any Australian content. In fact, Australian content is American content that's for Australia, Crocodile Dundee or Australian movie stars that move overseas and become, in a sense, American actors. And so it's very easy to misjudge us. Well, that's the same as us. If we travel to France, it's easy to have all of these tourist ideas of what is real France or Germany or Japan. And I'll give you another example, is that Going into France, our philosophy is always fresh is best. So making fresh dough, toppings fresh, and so on. Well, the French believe frozen is better than fresh. That when you freeze something at the point of picking a vegetable, by the way, scientifically they're right.
There you go.
There you go.
So it's not for me to change Australians' view of the world, because they're right in their own minds. But there's whole chains in France called Picards, which are frozen freezers full of incredible meals. And the French love them, and it's a hugely successful chain because the mentality is frozen is better than fresh. Now, I was having arguments with our CMO when I first arrived, and then I went, hold a second, go back to our philosophy. If the French believe frozen's better, why am I arguing this? And technically it is anyway. So you got to be very careful with your philosophies and be very firm on business models and be careful to have those blinkers, because you'll get caught out. I mean, when we go into Taiwan's obviously clearly influenced by China and historically by Japan and so on, but it's still Taiwan. And so we still got to look through the lens of it as a market. And there'll be differences, and we've got to keep our open eyes.
I guess on that point with the international expansion, it feels like you've built a good team, or you yourself have built and developed skills to really understand markets in ways that the Americans coming to Australia haven't. What are some of the key things you do when you're scoping out a new market? So if we take Taiwan as an example, is it about finding the best people in the local market? Is it about spending a lot of time there? How do you actually understand these markets better than a lot of your competitors have historically?
So one of the first things we do is we do some pretty extensive research, often in history, some of the most in-depth research probably ever done on the pizza category, but with a number of questions where we're not predicting the outcomes of those questions. We're very open-minded, because Domino's isn't the same product all over the world. Our product is very adaptable to whichever country we're in. The way we take the brand could be quite different. For example, in France and the Netherlands, when we first went there, France, food is life. To the Dutch, food is fuel. In France, more women eat pizza than men. Well, in the Netherlands, more men eat pizza than women. So really dramatic cultural things. Now, if you're having one Domino's brand and you're applying exactly the same way, you're missing a lot of really important relevance to the consumer. So our early days in France was very much a very feminine brand, and really enjoying some of the delightful menu development and brand development that really put women at the front and center of our thinking. Whereas in the Netherlands, it was functional food, and it was all of the very service and price and stomach fill. Now the Dutch have moved on. It was really ironic when we were in the Netherlands in that first year. I read an article where the Australians were being fed in Afghanistan by the Dutch army, and food was unacceptable, was inedible, but culturally, that's where the Netherlands was in those days. As I said, the Netherlands now is a far more global in cuisine and so on. But so doing really extensive research to find where could you differentiate against who's in the market. We also, a lot of companies look at the market size and shape and then run to the rules of the market. We look at it and say, well, what rules haven't been applied yet to this market, and could they work? When we went into Japan, the whole pizza business was a delivered business, and it was founded in the 80s when rents were so expensive that all the pizza shops were in, and Domino's had gone there first, were in the garages under buildings for no carryout. So they were doing 5% carryout. Well, decades had changed, deflation, rents in Tokyo were cheaper than in Brisbane, and over years and years of deflation. So, and Japan's dominated by convenience store operators like 7-Eleven and Family Mart and Lawson's, which are these big multi-thousand store chains. And they were changing their model, moving from 100 to 120 square meter shops to 300 square meter shops for convenience. And, a couple of thousand of these sites were hitting the streets every year. So perfect Domino's stores on the high street where we could do carry out. And franchising hadn't been applied heavily in Japan. So there was all these sort of philosophies of what was missing around changing the model, relocating all the stores from the dungeons of Japan to the high street, better-looking stores, more approachable, franchising the model as well. Today, we're half franchise, half corporate. Going and looking at pizza was considered an exceptional food because it was only ever marketed at Christmas, New Year, and Golden Week, and that's when it did all its business. was considered a treat. Well, now we started chasing the customer in different areas and growing consumption. So if you just look at the power of the market, you'd say, well, how big can you be? Well, we look at the market, all the research, and then say, well, what's missing that we think we can bring? And cultures also value, especially the Japanese, what authentic things are you bringing? If you want to be successful here, we're Japanese, but we do also value if you're going to bring something to our culture, and we're going to reward you for that. And it's trial and error and testing and lots of innovation is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of tests to get ones that crack through, and then you back them like a crazy person to bring them to life. And that's what we've been doing.
Well, speaking of innovation, Don, and tech, we'd love to dig into all of that. But before we do, we'll just take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. So, Don, there's no doubt that Domino's has, often been spoken about as a tech business that sells pizza. Ren and I witnessed the incredible growth in share price of Domino's while we were at university and completely missed the boat on the whole thing. So we're spewing about that. But no doubt that at the time it was tech. And so how do you think about Domino's unique value proposition, and what role does tech actually play within your business? And I guess is the phrase tech business that sells pizza, is that right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's something the media gave us and have quoted it endlessly. But for the record, for all of your investors, which are hopefully becoming sophisticated investors, we are absolutely a pizza company first. Absolutely. But like any successful retailer in the last 15 years, we've embraced technology. But it was all of that technology was to help us sell pizza. And we're passionate about pizza. We had to build a lot of technology skills as an innovative business. We use technology to help us innovate and bring and enable so many of these product, service, and image tools. And so that's why it's probably confused so many. And it's funny how the media works, right? Something gets quoted by a journalist, and then someone refers to that article and as if Domino's had said it, and then from then on it's alive. And look, it's at the end of the day, it's not the biggest thing, but we're genuinely a pizza company first. We're obsessed with pizza. It's in our purpose. We believe pizza, our pizza brings people closer, is our purpose. It's all in our values. We live and breathe it all day, and we love pizza, and that's who we are first. So thanks for asking.
John, you may be a pizza company first, but you have trialed and tested some pretty cool pieces of tech. My mind goes to drone delivery in New Zealand, and also the pizza delivery robot, which was nicknamed Drew, as a new way to sort of deliver pizza. I mean, there's some pretty cool technology that you wouldn't expect a pizza company to be sort of on the forefront of. So I guess, what have you learned from those trials, autonomous vehicles and drone delivery, and how do you think about the tech, pipeline for Domino's going forward?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that these are gimmicks and that we're just sort of pushing the envelope and playing with technologies for fun and gimmickry, but you raised Drew, Domino's robotic units, and that's absolutely not a gimmick. One of the problems that we will face as a business and are facing is that we're in this age of delivery. So the boom in delivery pre-COVID, during COVID, and will be post-COVID. Different analysts around the world are predicting that half of all retail by the end of this decade will be delivered. It's just so convenient, And the problem is there's not enough human beings on the planet to deliver the number of packages required from all retail. Forget pizza, forget aggregators, but think everything retail, a large proportion being delivered. So when you say it could be half, it doesn't mean it's whole. So there's still going to be, omni-channel, locations. But the sitting in Silicon Valley on one of our tours and understanding where we were going, I had one of those Kodak/Blockbuster moments where if we can't deliver our product, there's not enough people in years to come, we're out of business. So that's why we started playing with these tools, and we still are today. We still got a robotic trial in Germany. We're about to reignite our drone trial in New Zealand. The business partner there had to build a much bigger drone that could travel further and do a bigger payload, because our average order is bigger than a lot of people think. But know that these things are really important to us, because pre-COVID, we'd already hit the wall. So we're in Japan, we're in Europe, we're suffering that we couldn't staff our stores. Now, unfortunately, COVID unleashed a lot of drivers into the market. But as we've seen that open up again, Australia, pre this recent lockdowns, we're back to tight delivery market, driver market. The US is having a nightmare. Europe started to return. And so therefore we're going to see wage inflation. And then that leads us to innovate a lot. If you see our 310 delivery model, where our ambition is to deliver pizzas in under 10 minutes, and in many cases we do, that's all about how do we do more deliveries per hour, because inevitably we're going to have to pay our drivers more. And if you do 4 deliveries an hour and you're paying, $25, well, you can pay more if you can do 5 deliveries per hour or 6 deliveries per hour and have the same cost base per order. So we're obsessed with, a faster deliveries efficient, makes us be able to pay more. And it's got a huge benefit of convenience to the customer, but it also delivers a better product, because the quicker we can get from our ovens to your door, it almost becomes restaurant quality food. And our goal is to do that within a 3 or 5 minute window, which our competitors don't even come close. And these are the things that we obsess around, and technology around that. So if the technology that was very consumer facing in the last 15 years, our apps and all of the cool things we brought to that, then we became good marketers around that. A lot of the innovation isn't as obvious to to consumers, but they're getting the benefits, because they're things like, we have a thing called the future order screen, which predicts when you're in the app, we're predicting if you're going to place that order, and we start making and baking it to give ourselves a head start. Faster ovens, on and on and on. A lot of the technology we're creating is operational technology. It's not as sexy to talk about to customers, but they're getting the benefit, because that's why Domino's is delivering a hotter, fresher pizza more consistently.
Alec and I have a retail background. Both I worked for Woolies and Ren was at Coles, and so that last mile has always been a challenge for the delivery space. So it's fascinating what the technology is helping in that area. I remember when I was living with a housemate, though. You'd be pleased to know, Don, I think from memory, if the delivery was outside that 10-minute window, there was some sort of a money back or some sort of guarantee. And as much as we tried to push those drivers to be outside that 10 minutes, never happened. We always got our pizza. So they were on.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And that is a student thing to do. Challenge the game.
Watch, we were pushing. Let's have a chat about the franchise network. So how do you think about balancing a network of company-owned versus franchise stores?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, we're in the pizza business, and then the way that we're growing that throughout the world is using the model of franchise. And franchisee health and well-being and success is as critical as being the best in the value equation for pizza in our market. And you'll see us report on franchisee profitability in the coming year, and just the success of our franchisees. The reason we have corporate stores is we want to be the biggest franchisee in each market in our corporate stores, because we want to walk in the shoes of our sub-franchisees. We want to do a lot of our own testing and failing in our own stores rather than fail in our franchise stores. It also helps us grow future franchisees. So when we're expanding the markets rapidly in Asia and Europe, yes, we've got our sub-franchisees growing, but we're growing managers. They're our future franchisees. So the more successful corporate stores we have in these high growth phases of our business, then they will feed more store openings as well. So most of our corporate store growth will be in Asia and Europe. Australia's at a scale now. We still have about 350 stores to open in Australia and New Zealand, but we already have, enough of a franchise base. And so our corporate store base will be more modest in years to come, circa 40 to 60 stores in Australia and New Zealand, which still puts us as the biggest franchisee, which is the first priority.
The growth rate you're talking about, Don, is pretty incredible. You say, it's pretty saturated in Australia, but we still have 350 stores to open. Bryce and I come from, obviously the stores were bigger, but we're talking about store networks of 1,000 that might open, 20 or to 50 a year. So it's pretty incredible, the growth that you're still seeing in an already saturated market. I guess the question is, once Australia is saturated, once you have, dominant market share in the countries you're in, how do you think about growth from there? Is it more countries just opening up new markets?
We are fortunate enough that we do have some pretty big geographies that are a long way from penetration. So in our existing geographies, we've got at least 10, most likely more than 15 years of growth if you look at Japan, Germany, and France. Particularly the Benelux and Australia, New Zealand, they'll get there a lot sooner. And fortunately, that's only 60 million of the 365 million today. So the other 300 million once we had Taiwan is still the biggest share of our business. At least 10 to 15 years of growth. But we are still pursuing more countries as well. We have the management. We have, our One Digital platform, which is our technology platform, is globally adapted, and as we turn it on, it's been successful in every country. Created in Brisbane and killing it in Japan and Germany and France. Places that you would think surely there's someone more sophisticated, but we've done a good job with the team. So yeah, we think that we can apply our model to more countries. If you said to me in the next 5 to 10 years, I'd be surprised if we got any more than 4 or 5 countries in our network, because we still have so much to do with what we've got. You'll also note that as time goes on and we hit new penetration models and new tipping points, we do upgrade the outlooks for countries. So when we bought Japan, it was 800, then it was 1,000, then 1,500, and who knows in the future. Even Australia, when we listed, I think we said it'd be 500 odd stores, and now we believe Australia and New Zealand is going to be 1,200 stores. So I think Australia and New Zealand will probably be maxing out at around the 1,200 stores, but the other countries, my gosh, we've got a lot of growth to come.
So Don, one of the important parts of understanding a business when it comes to investing, and particularly for retail investors, is to understand management. So do you have a leadership philosophy as CEO?
Yeah, and it has changed over the years as I've matured. Especially in my role today, I see myself as a servant leader, and that whilst a key part of my job is living in the next 5 to 10 years. So making sure we're seeing the potholes, the things that can kill us, so that we're investing and navigating the environment. So that's a big part of my job. But the other part of my job is I don't physically operate any of the business units. We've got a CEO in every country. So my job is to support them and equip them and give them the tools and enable them and challenge them. So much more of a servant role. As much as I may be their boss in many cases, it's not the culture of our business. I mean, these CEOs are very empowered to run their business units. We have global products and the things that we do with our technology and our strategy and insight tools and some of the ESG work we're doing. We're aggregating some of the globalness and finance, of course, because we consolidate onto the ASX. But in market, your marketing, your development, your operations, your products, very local, the main driving things of any country. And so, yeah, I feel like my job as a servant leader to be there for my team, but at the same time challenge them to be the best they can possibly be and enable that with the tools that we're bringing forward globally to give them and make them the best in their markets.
I love that comment you made there about you're living 3 to 5 years in the future. There's a Jeff Bezos quote that said something similar that has always stuck with me, and he would say, "Don't congratulate me on my current quarter because I delivered that 3 years ago." And so fast-growing CEOs, you love to see that they're thinking so far ahead. But I guess with that comes the fact that you need to build the right team to deliver the current quarter and live in the moment. How do you think about building a team across all these different geographies and building a consistent company culture across the business?
Most of our CEOs have been ex-franchisees, and that's a key part of our model, is that we look at any country and business and we look for the leading sub-franchisees, and that can get Groundhog Day after a period of time. Your coal room's broken down today, a driver didn't turn up to work, there's been a safety or security issue that you've got to be all over, and after time, it's the same day. And so when we get our best, we challenge them and say, well, why don't you roll some of that into equity in the public company and come and be a leader? And then you're really engaged, at another level. And so we've got a really good pipeline of ex-franchisees that are COOs or head of franchise operations, and they're the future CEOs. We'll announce pretty soon one of our team members who's going to be the CEO of Taiwan, and he's a 20-year veteran. I'm 34 years. You look at our leadership, 15 is young. And by the way, they might be 35 years of age because Nick Knight started as a wobbleboarder at 15 years of age and runs Australia and New Zealand. He's still only in his 30s. So much depth of experience. So we have really good tenure, really good cultural understanding of this business because you've grown up and understand high volume mentality, our value model. You understand the culture of franchising. You were an ex-franchisee. You know how to walk in the shoes and the emotion of a franchisee. Then we assist these entrepreneurial leaders with technical people that we do bring from outside the company, financial people, marketers, highly skilled data scientists, and so on, that are we can feed this entrepreneurial drive in each country. So, but the key is actually that leader, somebody who's embedded in our culture, who really understands and has watched us do this now. So we do these live calls every week, and the global leadership team are listening to each other's challenges, and sometimes they're irrelevant. Something going on in Japan may be completely irrelevant to France. We're doing ESG, and the Japanese culture's concern for animal welfare is not the same intensity as it is in, say, Europe. And that's just, that's different cultures, and we respect that. Or what is diversity? Reflecting your communities as a board and and they're different by country, because diversity is very different by location around the world. The CEOs, because they become so well aware and their blinkers are opened up, that we've got a really strong pipeline. It's actually the biggest reasons why we've become the largest Domino's group, because we've had the lowest turnover, the longest tenure, in other words, and of highly skilled leaders, and many of them are famous throughout the Domino's world and in their own countries. They're rock stars, yeah.
Wow. Rockstars Domino's franchisee, there you go. It sounds similar to the experiences I had at Woolies. You'd see the store managers who were really great at leading people and then worked their way up the corporate ladders and were there for 35 years and were 35 years old.
Very, very similar.
Yeah.
One of the benefits, though, for Domino's is you can get to own a piece of the pie on the way. And that's harder in some of the burger chains and the chicken chains that are big capital investments. It's hard for someone who's flipping a burger one day to say, I'm definitely going to own that. Whereas we have a thing called the Path to Excellence. And pizza delivery driver today, 2 or 3 years from now, you could actually own your own franchise. 10 years from now, you could own several stores and be a very wealthy individual if you choose that journey. And that's one of the journeys. Our Path to Excellence goes all the way from interview, pizza maker, delivery driver, manager, franchisee, or executive. But it is a little bit more unique to Domino's. There's a few other businesses like ourselves, but the fact that you get to be an owner, there's something about being an owner versus being a corporate type.
Yeah.
When you live and die on your P&L, like it's how you feed your family, it's a really interesting psychology that goes through your head. You're probably living that with this.
Well, I was just going to say, we quit our corporate jobs and now we're living and dying on our P&L. So
exactly.
We understand what you're
Don,
talking about.
I think we could talk pizza all day, but we want to first of all say thank you for taking the time and joining us today. I think this was a great interview. We've certainly got a lot out of it. I'm sure a lot of our audience will as well. We do always like to finish these interviews by, I guess, looking to the future. Well, you're already 3 to 5 years in the future, so joining you in the future and I guess asking what the future holds for Domino's. So if we start short term, and if you think about what the next 12 months looks like, what does that look like for Domino's? Is there anything in the product pipeline that you can talk to us about today?
Yeah, so products are more specific to countries, and so rather than rattle off all 10, there is an underlying current in our menu developments that ultimately you come to us for a treat. So our food is indulgent, and customers always tell us, whatever you do, Domino's, never take our treat away from us. But where possible, how do we make that treat better and better for you in the way that we're working with ingredients, with crusts, healthier crusts. And this is the beginning of and it's part ESG as well, in that, the impact that dairy has on the planet, that cows have on the planet, and what is the future? What does that look like in the journey to the future products? So that's a really, really big focus. On my trip overseas, I'm very fortunate the Australian government let me travel because obviously we're looking at other countries. But I was also meeting with business partners about future products for our whole ESG platform as well. For example, our dairy partner. And it's so exciting to play in this space of knowing that we could be one of the people that bring the future forward because of our scale. And our customers give us a lot more right to do so because we have a much younger consumer that's attitudinally who we are. So 18 and 24-year-olds, that sort of attitude, much more adaptive to change than someone in their 40s and above. And our core, because that's the core of who we are, it's how we got technology rolled out so much faster than most. Well, food's the same. We think that there's really exciting things coming in the food space. Better for you, better for the planet, still indulgent, absolutely everything you love about Domino's. That's first. It's got to be indulgent, but all these other great things, the great positive attributes.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I at Coles I was working in food waste and sustainability, and you just the same thing that you're saying. The scale that these businesses operate on, the ability to affect change. So that's great that you're thinking about it, and we're excited to see what you do in that space. I guess if you think about, businesses are always facing different risks, and I'm sure a business that's operating in 10 countries is facing plenty. If you think, what would be the biggest risk for Domino's right now?
Yeah, when you're a fast growth company, you've got to make sure you are still keeping an open mind and looking at a wider net. A very focused company, a very high growth focused company, is so engaged every day on the challenges of putting a lot more stores on the ground and executing and developing people. And what we've seen in the past, and we're always trying to get ahead of that now, is you get speed bumps. And it's self-inflicted. Most of Domino's issues in our history have been self-inflicted, where we've broken away from some of our own rules because we think it's a different environment and a different place. I need to learn that no, those rules still apply. And so being disciplined but open-minded at the same time to change. It's these ebbs and flows. When is it time that you have to change? And no, hold a second, that's a golden rule. It's been around for 60 years at Domino's. I just interviewed four of the four presidents of the history of Domino's, including the founder in the US, and literally in the last few weeks. And, what's the same, but what's different for each of the 10 years, and it's amazing what's the same. But yet it's entrepreneurs, we want to change it all the time, I have it, now it's different. And these are the things that get you, is that you don't realize that there's something you're not taking care of, and it bites you, and it can bite you really hard. So, for me, looking at the succession throughout the group, I still plan. I hope I'm here, for many, many years to come. I've no intention of time. I'm only 52 years of age, and I know most of our leadership would want to be here for many years to come. But who are the next generation coming? The next generation, because none of us want to build a business over a 50, 60-year time frame to hand it over and then it collapses. That what was your life's work all about? So we're having fun. We're building this great business. But how are we also making sure it's going to be here for decades to come? And how are you seeding the right culture for that loose, tight, open for innovation? For especially, who could have predicted COVID? Some of the things that we've had to cross out of nowhere. Sometimes you get two things collide. A government brings a big VAT increase and inflates wages at the same time. You get a tax on your sales and you're sitting there going, my gosh, we just took half the P&L out for a store level. How are we innovating against that? And now everybody's in the same game. Your competitors are as well. So it actually is a time when you can take a lot of share, because do you do constructive, positive reactions to that? Like in COVID, we positively led through COVID. We invested, we tore up our budget and said we're keeping all franchisees whole. If that means we got to subsidize them, we invested more in marketing, and we invested more in technologies to enable quickly. I'm so proud of the way the team rallied, but it was literally invest, whereas a lot of companies shrunk, cut costs, didn't pay their landlords, did do this, We did take some JobKeeper originally for our print. We have a printing company, and it was a way to keep them whole. But once we realized how well the Domino's business was doing, we handed the JobKeeper back, all of it, from us, and we were one of the first to do so. And we were thankful the government did it, because in that very one window when they gave it, it stopped us laying off people in our printing business that literally had halved in volume. So it did its job. But then, hold a second, we're really profitable as a company. Thank you, Australia, for doing this for us. We really appreciated it. It definitely changed our thinking in the time, but we're so profitable. Why are we keeping it? Here it is. Have it back.
So Don, final question. Your life has been incredible. Like your story is an Australian success story, and Domino's is a success story as a business. But as an entrepreneur, you're always thinking about the future and thinking about how can we keep growing and keep having more success. So if you look and you think 10 years into the future, what does success look like for Domino's?
That more people shared in our success in this decade, that shareholders have done very well, our franchisees have done very well, and in many cases our communities have, but we can even do more, that the planet can do a lot better as a result of Domino's existing. our team members and so on. So we look at all stakeholders and say that this is a future, this next 10 years, really pushing the envelope to say at the size and scale and where we're going, that more people get to share in this pie than may have even in the last decade. When we think about the business itself, as I mentioned, there's significantly more delivery. It will be the driver of our business. That delivery will look different, a lot more on the journey from to electric. That all of our vehicles get electric, mostly electric bikes. It's the odd scooter and the odd car. Then autonomous. Autonomous, not exclusively, I don't think, by the end of the decade. I think we'll still probably employ more drivers than we do today. But with the total volume, a large proportion of that will be done autonomous, as will some of the roles in the business. But we'll employ a lot more people. So it's not about getting rid of jobs. A lot of these are co-piloting, to our business, and our food, will be very different at the end of this decade to what it is today. Continually the journey up in quality, but the health and well-being with that quality, with that indulgence, and its impact on the planet, a light year away from where we are today, and knowing the projects that we've already got in the works and what we expect to achieve. So I couldn't be more excited. After 34 years, I sit here and go, we're in the best decade out of those 34 years. It's for us to screw up, and inevitably we'll trip somewhere. It's just the nature of humans, and we've got a lot of humans in our business, so we're gonna make some mistakes. But I'm sure that stakeholders that are involved in Domino's will be far happier that we existed and did what we did at the end of this decade than the start of the decade.
Love to hear it, Don, and I'm sure while the food may be different in 10 years, there'll still be pineapples on pizzas, I'm sure. So
I think it's a very high chance.
It's been a fascinating conversation. Whilst the growth story has been pretty unbelievable to date, it certainly sounds like there's plenty more to come. So we're very much looking forward to watching this story play out over the next few years, Don. Thank you so much for the time and sharing your experience and the story of Domino's with our community. So thank you very much. It's been awesome.
It's my honor, and thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Equity Mates Investing podcast is a product of Equity Mates Media. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional finance, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of Equity Mates Investing podcast are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. Do not take financial advice from a podcast. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the Equity Mates website, where you can find ASIC resources and find a registered financial professional near you. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media and the hosts of Equity Mates Investing podcast acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today.